Joining me now with more is the former U.S. Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe. Director, great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
You bet, Maria.
What is the significance of Israel's success in these last 2 weeks in taking down this longtime leader of Hezbollah?
Yeah, and taking down Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah, Israel has effectively not just degraded Hezbollah's operational capabilities, but really decimated it by taking out the entire Hezbollah leadership, literally the top dozen or so Hezbollah commanders. When you add to that, Maria, what Israel has been successful in doing in taking out the Hamas leadership, taking out Haniya in Iran a few weeks ago, it's a blow not only to those organizations, those terror organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas, but a blow to their puppet master, Iran. Now, what Iran has really spent the last 44 years trying to do, Maria, is build a ring of terror, ring of fire around Israel. And in just the last 6 weeks, through these incredible intelligence and military successes, Israel has effectively blown that ring of fire apart. And, you know, in doing so, Maria, Israel hasn't just helped its own national security posture, it's helped that of the U.S., which begs the question, why is the U.S. not doing more?
Well, I mean, it's a good question because when you look at what the other terrorists have done, the Houthis attacking our warships, 24 ballistic missiles, I mean, what should be the response from the United States? And I also throw in this question, the effectiveness of the fact that Israel has not even shared some of this information with the U.S., like the explosion of the pagers and the devices.
Well, you know, unfortunately, the Biden-Harris administration is taking the same foreign policy strategic approach that they have so often, which is to do the exact wrong thing at the exact wrong time. So at this moment, they're calling for a ceasefire, for a diplomatic solution, which would really only accomplish one thing. It would allow Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran to rebuild and rearm. And it has been a failed strategy. But in this case, Maria, I don't think this is just incompetence. I think this is all about political expediency. It's no secret that the Democrats want to obtain a ceasefire in advance of the presidential election coming up to help Kamala Harris. And in so doing, they're really willing to put politics above our national security. And it is troubling, Maria, because how far are they willing to go? Well, as you point out, they're willing to ignore acts of war. I mean, when our own intelligence community tells us that they're hacking into the Trump campaign to help Kamala Harris win the election, when they engage in an act of war of trying to assassinate President Trump, and perhaps most importantly, when they engage in the act of war of firing through its Houthi-controlled rebels ballistic missiles at 3 U.S. warships, and there had been no actions and no consequences to those acts of war by Iran, it unfortunately tells you how far the Democrats are willing to go to stop Donald Trump. And, you know, I think larger at play here, Maria, is not just this short-term election, but that it really reveals the failed strategy of the Democrats over the last 10 years in dealing with Iran. You know, the famous Obama doctrine, which was that, look, we can deter Iran diplomatically and it won't come at the expense of Israel. Well, Barack Obama was wrong. He misunderstood the lethality and the evil nature of the Iranian regime. And what Israel has done is essentially employ the Trump doctrine, a maximum pressure campaign, understanding that the only way to deter terrorists like Iran and their proxies is to put your foot on their throat. And Israel has done that. We should be assisting Israel in doing so. But again, political expediency and the quest for power by Kamala Harris and the Democrats is resulting in American national security taking a back seat, unfortunately.
That's quite disturbing. You also had the Attorney General this week come out and give a speech about talking about a special counsel who he appointed, as well as talking about the attacks on the Trump campaign, but not mentioning Trump's name and not really saying that they'll do anything about the Iranian attacks.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Iran shares a common goal with the Democrats, which is let's stop Donald Trump at all costs. And so we talk about Iranian election interference. But the Biden-Harris administration is doing the same thing. I mean, you talk about the Attorney General, an unsolicited speech weeks before presidential election, all while his special counsel is violating the federal principles of prosecution in taking political actions, who literally wants to selectively cherry pick and release grand jury testimony weeks, if not days, before the election. You layer on top of that a chairman of the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates by 0.5 point. All of these things are actions that are clearly intended to help Kamala Harris and to influence the outcome of the election. It's election interference.
Real quick before you go, you are from Texas and you've seen this border explosion before, most, in terms of 10 million illegals crossing into Texas, the southern border. And Kamala Harris went to the Arizona border on Friday. But we have this new information that there are tens of thousands of people roaming the streets in America that are either murderers or rapists.
Well, look, let's start with this. The primary role of the federal government is to provide for the common defense, which includes securing the sovereignty and integrity of our territorial borders. The person in charge of that for the last 3.5 years was the Vice President and Border Czar, Kamala Harris. And she might try and wish it away, but she has let 9 or 10 million people commit the crime of entering this country illegally. She's responsible for the largest crime wave in U.S. history, and now the government's own statistics reflect that Donald Trump accurately is telling you that includes thousands and thousands of the very worst, of murderers, of rapists, and of terrorists. And Kamala Harris owns that. It's hard to calculate how many American lives have been taken, how much tragedy has been inflicted on the American people. But Kamala Harris is responsible for that. She owns that. And for her to pretend now that she cares about the border reflects that she's an absolute and total fraud. She's been an open borders advocate her entire life, and Americans are less safe because of it.
John, it's good to see you this morning. We so appreciate your time. Former Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, thank you. And now this.